When I refused to put my house in their name, my son and daughter-in-law said they'd place me in assisted living. She mocked, "They'll feed you pureed slop while we enjoy the jacuzzi." That night, I overheard them arguing about my hidden will. The next day, I made a call that would make her face the one thing she feared most. I stared at the papers Daniel slid across my kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed him breakfast before school for 18 years, and my hands started shaking before I even read the first line. "What is this?" I asked, though somewhere deep in my gut I already knew, that sick feeling you get when you realize someone you love has been planning something behind your back. Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. "It's just a precaution, Mom, for your protection." My son's voice sounded hollow, rehearsed, like he'd practiced this speech in the mirror. I picked up the document and read the header, Property Transfer Agreement. They wanted me to sign my house over to them. The house my late husband Richard and I had bought 37 years ago, where I'd raised Daniel, where every corner held memories that Chloe couldn't possibly understand. Protection from what exactly? I asked, keeping my voice steady even though fury was building in my chest like a pot about to boil over. That's when Chloe walked in from the living room, wine glass in hand, that smug little smile playing at her lips. "From yourself, Alina. You're 72 years old. What if you fall? What if you forget to pay the property taxes? What if something happens and you can't manage anymore?" The way she said my name, with that fake sweetness dripping like poisoned honey, made my skin crawl. I'd never liked Chloe from the moment Daniel brought her home 6 years ago. All flash and no substance. Designer handbags and a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. But I'd kept my mouth shut because he seemed happy, and I'd learned the hard way that mothers who criticize their sons' choices end up alone. Now I see I should have trusted my instincts. I have a bad habit of that, always second-guessing myself, always worried about being the difficult mother-in-law, always biting my tongue when I should speak up. Richard used to tell me I was too accommodating, that I let people walk all over me because I hated conflict. He was right. After he died 3 years ago, I'd become even worse about it, desperate not to lose Daniel too, willing to overlook Chloe's little digs and demands. But this was different. "I'm not signing anything," I said, pushing the papers back across the table. Daniel finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. "Calculation. Mom, be reasonable. We're trying to help you." "Help me out of my own home, you mean?" Chloe laughed, actually laughed, and took a long sip of her wine. "God, you're so dramatic. We're not kicking you out. We'd let you stay here, obviously. It's just that legally the house would belong to us. For tax purposes, estate planning, it's what smart families do." I stood up then, my chair scraping loud against the hardwood floor. "This conversation is over. I'm going to bed." As I walked away, I heard Chloe mutter something to Daniel, her voice low and sharp like a knife you don't see coming. I didn't catch the words, but I caught the tone. Contempt, pure contempt. I couldn't sleep that night, tossing and turning while my mind raced through every interaction I'd had with Chloe over the years, seeing them all in this new ugly light. Around 2 in the morning I got up for water, my throat dry and tight, and that's when I heard their voices drifting up from the living room. They must have thought I was asleep. I should have announced myself, should have walked right in, but instead I stood frozen in the dark hallway, barely breathing, listening to them destroy me. "She's being impossible," Chloe was saying, her voice sharp with frustration. "We need that house, Daniel. Do you know how much it's worth? In this market, we could sell it, pay off our debts, finally live the life we deserve." "She'll never agree to sell," Daniel said, and he sounded tired, defeated. "Then we don't give her a choice. We follow through with the plan. Get her declared incompetent, move her into assisted living, and once she's out of the picture, we can do whatever we want with the property." My hand flew to my mouth to stop the gasp that wanted to escape. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be my son talking about me like I was an obstacle to remove. "The lawyer said we need documentation," Daniel continued. "Proof that she can't manage her affairs." Chloe laughed, that awful brittle sound. "Oh please, I can manufacture that easily enough. A few missed bills here, some confusion there, maybe she starts forgetting appointments. You know how these things work. The system is set up for families to take control when seniors become a burden." A burden? She called me a burden. I backed away slowly, carefully, retreating to my bedroom before I could hear any more. I sat on the edge of my bed in the darkness, trembling with a mixture of rage and heartbreak and something else. Fear, real fear, because I realized in that moment that I wasn't safe in my own home anymore. My son, the baby boy I'd rocked through colic and held through nightmares and cheered for at every soccer game, was planning to institutionalize me so he and his horrible wife could steal everything Richard and I had built. I wanted to march back downstairs and confront them immediately, wanted to scream and throw things, and demand to know what happened to the sweet child I'd raised, but that's where my worst flaw kicked in. My temper. When I get really angry, I stop thinking clearly, I say things I regret, I make everything worse. Richard used to have to calm me down when I'd get like this, remind me to think before I spoke, to plan instead of react. So I forced myself to breathe slowly to think this through. If I confronted them now in the heat of the moment with my anger blazing, they'd deny everything, gaslight me, maybe even escalate their plans. No, I needed to be smart about this. I needed to be strategic. And lucky for them, They just tried to manipulate someone who'd spent 40 years working in probate law, who knew every trick and loophole that greedy families used to steal from elderly relatives. The next morning I came down to breakfast acting like nothing had changed, smiling at Daniel, accepting Chloe's fake cheerful greeting with a nod. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told them as I poured coffee, watching Chloe's eyes light up with triumph. "About the house and my future and making smart decisions." "Oh, Alina, I'm so glad," Chloe gushed, reaching across the table like she wanted to take my hand. I pulled back slightly, pretending to reach for the cream. "I'm not saying I'll sign anything today, but I want to understand the options. Could you show me some of those assisted living places you mentioned?" Chloe actually clapped her hands together. "Absolutely. There's one about 20 minutes from here, very upscale. I'll make an appointment for us to tour it this week." I nodded and sipped my coffee, tasting nothing, my mind already racing ahead to what I needed to do. As soon as they left for work, Daniel to his middle management job that barely paid the bills and Chloe to whatever she did all day besides spend money they didn't have, I went into my study and unlocked the filing cabinet where I kept my important papers. Everything was meticulously organized because that's who I am. Someone who dots every I and crosses every T, who keeps receipts and makes copies and never throws away documentation. It's a habit that drove Richard crazy sometimes, but right now it was going to save my life. I pulled out the folder labeled Estate Planning and opened it to the document I'd had my attorney Lydia draw up 2 years ago, right after Richard died. A living trust. The house wasn't in my name alone anymore, it was in the Alina Whitmore Living Trust, with me as the trustee and beneficiary. Daniel was listed as the successor trustee, but only after my death, and the trust documents explicitly stated that the property could not be sold or transferred without my written consent while I was alive and competent. More importantly, the trust had a poison pill provision that Lydia had suggested. If anyone tried to have me declared incompetent or force me into care against my will, Daniel would be immediately removed as successor trustee, and the house would go to charity instead. I'd never told Daniel about this trust. I'd meant to, kept meaning to bring it up at Sunday dinners or holiday visits, but something always stopped me. Maybe some part of me knew even then that I needed to protect myself. Maybe I'd seen more in Chloe than I wanted to admit. I made copies of everything and locked the originals in my safe deposit box at the bank. Then I sat down at my computer and started documenting everything I could remember from last night's conversation, typing out every word while it was fresh, noting the date and time. But documentation wasn't enough. I needed proof of what they were planning, solid evidence that would hold up if things got legal. That's when I remembered something Chloe had said that first day with the papers. For tax purposes, estate planning. I pulled out my own tax records, perfectly organized by year. Then I logged into the county assessor's website and looked up my property. What I found made my blood run cold. Someone had filed a preliminary change of ownership form 3 months ago, listing Daniel and Chloe as co-owners with right of survivorship. The form was marked pending because it required my notarized signature to complete, but the fact that they'd already started the process, that they'd been planning this for months, made everything so much worse. I printed out the form and stared at the signature at the bottom. It was supposed to be mine, but it wasn't, not quite. Someone had practiced my signature, gotten it pretty close, but I could see the differences. The way the E looped, the slant of the R, it was a good forgery, but it wasn't perfect. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was fraud, document fraud, possibly elder abuse, and I had them. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and called Lydia. "I need to see you today," I told her when she answered. "It's urgent." She heard something in my voice because she didn't ask questions, just told me to come to her office in an hour. Sitting across from Lydia in her book-lined office, surrounded by law degrees and professional certificates, I told her everything. About the transfer papers, the conversation I'd overheard, the forged preliminary filing. Lydia listened with her lawyer face on, calm and neutral, but I saw her jaw tighten when I mentioned the forgery. "Alina, this is serious," she said when I finished. "This isn't just a family disagreement. If they forged your signature on a legal document and filed it with the county, that's a crime. You need to report this." "To who?" "The police." My voice came out small, frightened. "I'm reporting my own son for fraud." "You're protecting yourself from people who are trying to steal your home and institutionalize you against your will," Lydia corrected firmly. "I know this is hard, but you need to think about what happens if you don't stop this now. They'll escalate. They'll find a doctor to declare you incompetent, they'll get a sympathetic judge, and before you know it you'll be locked in a memory care facility while they liquidate everything you own." She was right. I knew she was right, but the thought of calling the police on Daniel made me physically ill. Despite everything, he was still my son. I'd held him in my arms minutes after he was born. I'd stayed up nights when he was sick. I'd mortgaged this very house to pay for his college education. "What if," I said slowly, "what if I handle this differently? What if I give them enough rope to hang themselves?" Lydia leaned back in her chair, studying me. What are you thinking? They want me to tour assisted living places to go along with their plan. What if I do? What if I let them think they're winning while I gather more evidence? Record conversations, document everything they do, build an ironclad case. Alina, Lydia's voice was warning, that's dangerous. The longer you wait, the more opportunities they have to move against you. And if they realize you're onto them, they won't, I interrupted, and I heard the steel in my own voice, that stubborn streak that Richard used to shake his head at. Once I make up my mind about something, I don't back down, even when I should. It's gotten me in trouble before, this unwillingness to compromise or take the safe path. I can do this. I need to do this. Not just to protect myself, but to show them they can't treat people like this. Lydia sighed. At least let me contact the County Fraud Division, get an investigator assigned to this case. You can gather your evidence, but you need law enforcement involved now, before the trail goes cold. I agreed to that compromise, though part of me wanted to handle everything myself, to prove that I wasn't the helpless old woman they thought I was. See, there's that pride again, that need to show people I'm not weak or stupid or past my usefulness. It's probably my worst quality, this stubborn pride, and I know it, but I can't seem to stop myself. Over the next week I became someone I barely recognized, smiling and nodding while Chloe showed me glossy brochures for assisted living communities with names like Sunset Gardens and Golden Years Estates, places that cost $6,000 a month and looked like luxury hotels but were really just expensive waiting rooms for death. Look at this one, Chloe would say, pointing to pictures of elderly people playing bingo or doing watercolor painting, their smiles looking medicated and empty. They have a movie theater and a beauty salon. You'd love it there. It looks nice, I'd lie, while inside I was screaming, while I was memorizing every manipulative thing she said so I could write it down later. I started carrying my phone everywhere, voice recorder app ready, catching snippets of their conversations when they thought I couldn't hear. I documented every time Chloe made a comment about my memory or my capabilities. Alina, you already asked me that twice today, she'd say with exaggerated patience, even when I hadn't. Maybe you should write things down, sweetie, I worry about you. Daniel would just sit there, saying nothing, and his silence felt like the worst betrayal of all. At night I'd transfer everything to my computer, creating a detailed timeline with dates and quotes and evidence. The investigator Lydia had connected me with, a man named Raul Mendoza from the County Fraud Division, had advised me to keep detailed records of everything. The more evidence you have, the stronger the case, he told me during our initial phone call. But Mrs. Whitmore, please be careful. People who commit fraud don't react well when they're caught. I should have listened to that warning more carefully. I should have been more cautious, but my stubbornness wouldn't let me. 2 weeks into my surveillance operation, as I was starting to think of it, Chloe made her big mistake. She got greedy and careless. I came home from a doctor's appointment, a real one that I'd scheduled myself because I'm perfectly capable of managing my own healthcare, thank you very much, to find Chloe in my study, going through my filing cabinet. What are you doing? I asked from the doorway and she jumped like I'd shot her. Oh, Alina, you scared me, she said, quickly closing the drawer she'd been rifling through. I was just looking for the warranty information on the refrigerator. It's making a weird noise. The warranty information is in the kitchen, I said coldly. In the appliance folder on the counter where it's always been. Her face flushed red. Right, of course, I must have forgotten. She tried to brush past me, but I blocked her path. What were you really looking for, Chloe? I just told you, don't lie to me, I snapped, and there went my temper again, my voice rising despite my plan to stay calm and collected. I know what you and Daniel are planning. I know about the forged ownership forms. I know you want to put me away so you can take my house. The mask dropped, just like that. Chloe's fake sweetness evaporated and I saw the real person underneath, all sharp edges and cold calculation. You know what, Alina? Yes, we do want the house, we need it. Do you have any idea how much debt we're in? Do you know how much Daniel's father spent on your medical bills before he died? How much of our inheritance got eaten up by his hospital stays? He was my husband, I said, my voice shaking. And none of his medical care came out of inheritance that belonged to Daniel. We had insurance, we had savings. Savings that should have gone to us, Chloe shot back. We're his family too. But no, you kept everything, living in this big house all alone while we struggle in a cramped apartment. And for what? So you can rattle around here feeling sorry for yourself. You're wasting this asset, Alina. You're being selfish. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Selfish, this is my home. My husband and I worked our entire lives for this. And now you're just waiting to die in it, Chloe said viciously. At least if you were in assisted living, this place could be used by people who actually have a future. But fine, if you want to make this difficult, we'll do it the hard way. I've already talked to a lawyer about conservatorship. I've been documenting every little memory slip, every time you seem confused, every missed appointment. Okay. I haven't missed any appointments, I said, but even as I said it, doubt crept in. Had I? Chloe smiled, and it was a terrible smile full of venom. According to my records you have. According to the statements I'm prepared to give, you've been declining for months. And Daniel will back me up, won't you, honey? I hadn't realized Daniel was standing behind me until he spoke. "Mom, this doesn't have to be ugly. Just sign the papers. Let us take care of you." I turned to look at my son, really look at him, and I saw a stranger. When had this happened? When had the boy who used to bring me dandelions from the backyard turned into this person who could stand there and threaten me? "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you, get out of my house right now." "It's not your house for long," Chloe said, pushing past me. "Enjoy it while you can." They left, slamming the door behind them, and I stood there shaking with rage and fear and heartbreak. Then I did what I should have done from the beginning. I called Investigator Mendoza and told him everything, including what had just happened. "I think it's time we move forward," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Whatever you need from me, I'll provide it. I want them prosecuted." "Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to understand something," Mendoza said carefully. "This is going to get worse before it gets better. When people realize they're caught, they often double down. You need to be prepared for that." I wasn't prepared. Not really. 2 days later, Daniel and Chloe showed up with a man they introduced as their attorney, some slick-looking guy in an expensive suit who looked at me like I was already incompetent. "Mrs. Whitmore," the attorney said, setting his briefcase on my dining room table like he owned the place. "My clients have expressed concern about your ability to manage your affairs. They've asked me to facilitate a voluntary transfer of assets to avoid the need for court intervention." "There will be no transfer of anything," I said, fighting to keep my temper under control. "And I think you should leave." "Mom, don't be like this," Daniel pleaded. "We're trying to avoid having to go to court, having to make this public. If you just cooperate with you stealing from me." My voice rose despite my best efforts. "Cooperate with fraud. I know about the forged ownership documents, Daniel. I know everything." The attorney's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm not aware of any forged documents. My clients have shown me preliminary estate planning paperwork that appears to be standard." "Standard forgery, you mean?" I interrupted. "I never signed anything, and I never gave permission for my name to be used on county filings. What you're describing is elder fraud, and it's a crime." "Mom, you're confused," Chloe jumped in, her voice taking on that fake concerned tone. "You did sign those papers, remember? We went through them together last month. This is exactly what we're talking about, these memory issues." "There are no memory issues," I snapped. "And I'm not confused. I'm a 72-year-old woman with a sharper mind than both of you combined, and I will not be gaslit in my own home." The attorney stood up, clearly uncomfortable now. "Perhaps we should reschedule this conversation when everyone has had a chance to calm down." "There will be no rescheduling," I said, standing my ground even though my legs felt shaky. "The only conversation happening next is going to be with law enforcement. I've already filed reports about the fraudulent documents and the attempted coercion. You're all welcome to leave now before I call the police and have you removed." That's when Chloe's control finally snapped completely. "You ungrateful bitch," she hissed. "We've spent the last 6 years taking care of you, pretending to enjoy your boring Sunday dinners, listening to your endless stories about Richard, and this is how you repay us. You're a selfish old woman who's going to die alone in this house and no one will care." "Chloe, stop," Daniel said, but his voice was weak, ineffective. "No, she needs to hear this," Chloe continued, her face twisted with rage. "You think you're so smart, so superior, but you're just a relic. Your husband is dead, you have no friends, and your own son can barely stand to be around you. The only reason we kept coming over was for this house, and now you're too stupid to even appreciate that we were willing to let you stay in it." The words hit me like physical blows, each one finding a tender spot, but I refused to let her see me cry. "I may be alone," I said quietly, "but at least I'm not a thief. At least I don't prey on elderly family members. At least when I look in the mirror, I don't see someone who forged documents and plotted to institutionalize someone against their will for money." "You can't prove any of that," Chloe said, but she looked nervous now, finally realizing she'd said too much. "Actually, I can," I replied. "Every conversation we've had for the last 2 weeks has been recorded. Every threat, every manipulation, every lie. It's all documented and it's all been turned over to the authorities." The blood drained from Chloe's face. "You what?" "I recorded everything," I said, and I felt a surge of satisfaction despite the pain. "Every time you claimed I had memory problems when I didn't. Every time you pressured me about the house. Every scheme you discussed with Daniel when you thought I couldn't hear. It's all evidence now." Daniel looked like he might be sick. "Mom, you can't. We're family. Family doesn't do what you've done to me," I said, and my voice broke despite my best efforts. "Real family doesn't plot to take away someone's home and freedom. Real family doesn't forge documents and commit fraud. You stopped being my family the moment you decided I was just an obstacle to your inheritance." The attorney was already backing toward the door, clearly wanting no part of whatever legal disaster was unfolding. "I'm terminating my representation," he said quickly. "This is beyond the scope of what I agreed to." He practically ran out, leaving Daniel and Chloe standing there looking panicked and trapped. "We should go," Daniel said to Chloe, reaching for her arm. She shook him off. "This isn't over, Alina. You think you've won, but you haven't. We'll fight this, we'll get our own evidence, we'll show that you're not competent to." "I think you should stop talking," a new voice said from the doorway. Investigator Mendoza stood there, his badge visible on his belt, and he wasn't alone. 2 uniformed officers flanked him. Raul Mendoza, County Fraud Division. Chloe Whitmore, Daniel Whitmore, I need you both to come with me to answer some questions about fraudulent documents filed with the county assessor's office. Chloe's face went from red to white in seconds. You can't just show up here without a warrant. I can and I have, Mendoza said calmly. You're not under arrest at this time, but you're both persons of interest in an active fraud investigation. You can come voluntarily to answer questions, or I can get a warrant and we can do this the hard way. Your choice. Daniel looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in what felt like years, and I saw something in his eyes. Fear, real fear. Mom, please, tell them this is a misunderstanding. I can't do that, I said, and I felt tears finally starting to fall. Because it's not a misunderstanding, it's exactly what it looks like. You tried to steal my home, Daniel. You and your wife committed fraud and planned to institutionalize me against my will. Those are facts, not misunderstandings. We wouldn't have really put you in a home, he said desperately. That was just Chloe talking, we wouldn't have actually. You stood there and let her say it, I interrupted. You went along with everything. You forged my signature. You filed false documents. Don't you dare stand there now and pretend you were an innocent bystander. Mendoza stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore, Mrs. Whitmore, we need to go now. Chloe spun on me one last time. You're ruining our lives over nothing, you know that. Over some stupid paperwork and hurt feelings. We're going to lose everything because you couldn't just be reasonable. You're going to lose everything because you committed crimes, I said flatly. That's on you, not me. I watched them leave with the investigators, Chloe arguing the whole way, Daniel silent and shell-shocked, and I stood alone in my kitchen wondering how it had come to this. How had the sweet little boy who used to sit at this table doing homework while I cooked dinner turned into someone who could do this to me? The answer I knew was Chloe. She was the poison, the catalyst. Daniel had always been weak-willed, always been a follower, and she'd taken advantage of that, but knowing that didn't make it hurt less. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and investigations. Mendoza kept me updated on the case, explaining how they'd found not just the forged ownership documents, but also evidence that Chloe had been intercepting my mail, collecting medical records, building a file to use in a conservatorship hearing. They found emails between Chloe and Daniel discussing the best way to make me appear incompetent, which facilities would be cheapest, how quickly they could sell the house once they had control. Reading those emails broke something in me. Every word was calculated, mercenary, devoid of any love or care. They'd seen me as nothing more than an obstacle, a problem to solve, a barrier between them and money they felt entitled to. The fraud charges were serious. Forgery, attempted elder exploitation, filing false documents with a government agency. The county prosecutor was pushing for significant penalties because elder fraud was apparently a massive problem, and they wanted to make an example. Chloe hired an expensive defense attorney who tried to paint me as a confused old woman, misunderstanding normal estate planning, but my recordings and documentation destroyed that defense. You can't claim misunderstanding when there's audio of you discussing how to manufacture evidence of incompetence. Daniel couldn't afford a good lawyer and ended up with a public defender who advised him to cooperate with the prosecution. He gave a statement admitting everything, throwing Chloe under the bus, claiming she'd manipulated him, that he'd been scared of her, that he'd never really wanted to hurt me. Maybe that was even partially true, but it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. About a month after the investigators first showed up at my door, Chloe called me. I should have ignored it, but I answered, some sick curiosity needing to hear what she could possibly have to say. I hope you're happy, she spat without preamble. The prosecutor is offering a plea deal, 18 months in prison for fraud and elder abuse. 18 months of my life gone because you couldn't just share your precious house. I didn't put you in prison, Chloe, I said tiredly. You put yourself there by committing crimes, by forging documents and plotting to institutionalize someone against their will. Those were your choices, not mine. We needed that money, she said, and for the first time she sounded less angry than desperate. Daniel's company is laying people off, we're drowning in credit card debt, the apartment lease is up and we can't afford anywhere else. That house was supposed to save us. So you thought you'd solve your financial problems by stealing from me, I asked. By taking the home my husband and I spent our lives paying for, that was your solution. You don't need all that space, she argued. You're one person rattling around in 4 bedrooms, it's wasteful. We have our whole lives ahead of us. We could have used that equity to build something, but no, you had to be selfish. Stop calling me selfish. I cut her off, my temper flaring again despite my exhaustion. You're going to prison because you committed fraud, Chloe, because you forged my signature and filed false documents and plotted to have me declared incompetent so you could steal my assets. You're a criminal. Accept responsibility for that instead of blaming me for protecting myself. She started crying then, ugly sobbing sounds through the phone. Daniel's going to divorce me, she said. He says he can't be married to a felon, that it'll hurt his job prospects. I'm going to lose everything. My marriage, my freedom, any chance at the life I wanted, all because you wouldn't just sign some papers. Part of me, the part that was still a human being capable of empathy, felt sorry for her. But a larger part, the part that had been betrayed and threatened and nearly robbed of everything, felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "You should have thought about consequences before you committed crimes," I said. "Goodbye, Chloe, don't call me again." I hung up and blocked her number, then sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where this had all started, and cried for what felt like hours. Not for Chloe, but for Daniel, for the relationship we'd had and lost, for the family dinners that would never happen again, for the grandchildren I'd probably never have, because what woman would want to marry a man with a felony conviction whose mother turned him into the police? The trial happened 3 months later. Daniel took a plea deal for probation and community service in exchange for his testimony against Chloe. He never looked at me during his testimony, just stared at the defense table while he described how Chloe had orchestrated everything, how she'd researched conservatorship laws, how she'd practiced forging my signature for weeks before filing the preliminary ownership documents. Chloe's attorney tried to argue that she'd been acting out of genuine concern for my welfare, that the plan had been to take care of me in a nice facility while preserving the family assets, but the recordings I'd provided destroyed that narrative. You can't claim concern for someone's welfare when you're caught on tape mocking them, calling them a burden, discussing how to manufacture evidence of incompetence. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Elder fraud, forgery, attempted financial exploitation. The judge sentenced her to 2 years in state prison plus restitution, though what she was supposed to restitute wasn't clear since she hadn't actually managed to steal anything. My lawyer Lydia said the restitution was probably for my legal fees and emotional damages, but I told her not to pursue it. Chloe had nothing to take, and I didn't want to spend more years tied to this woman through collection proceedings. Daniel called me the night after Chloe was sentenced. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mom," he said, and his voice sounded broken. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I'm sorry. You were right about everything. About Chloe, about what we were doing, about all of it. I didn't say anything, just waited. I'm not asking you to forgive me," he continued. "I know I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I see it now, what I became. What I let her turn me into. I was so desperate to make her happy, to live up to her expectations, that I stopped thinking about right and wrong. I stopped thinking about you as my mother and started thinking about you as an obstacle, and that's, God, that's unforgivable." "Yes," I said quietly. "It is." He was quiet for a long moment. "Can I ask you something? If I'd refused to go along with Chloe's plans, if I'd stood up to her, would you have forgiven me? Would we have been okay?" I thought about that, really thought about it. "I don't know, Daniel, maybe, but you didn't refuse. You went along with every step. You forged my signature. You discussed putting me in a facility against my will. You chose your wife's greed over your mother's well-being, and those aren't choices I can just forget." "I know," he said. "I'm moving out of state, starting over somewhere Chloe can't find me when she gets out. I'm going to try to become someone better, someone you could have been proud of." "You could have been that person here," I said, feeling tears start again. "You could have been that person all along. That's what hurts the most, Daniel. Not what you tried to do, but knowing that you were capable of it. Knowing that my son, the boy I raised to know right from wrong, could look at me and see nothing but dollar signs." "I'm sorry," he said again, helplessly. "I know it doesn't change anything, but I'm sorry." We hung up after that, and I haven't heard from him since. I heard through Lydia that he moved to Arizona, got a job in construction, and is rebuilding his life. I hope he succeeds. I hope he becomes the person he should have been all along, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive him. That's my flaw, I suppose, that inability to let things go, that tendency to hold grudges even when forgiveness might be healthier. Richard would tell me I'm being too hard on Daniel, that everyone makes mistakes, that family should forgive family. But Richard isn't here anymore, and I'm the one who has to live with the knowledge that my only child tried to rob me. The house is quiet now, too quiet maybe. I spend my days maintaining it, working in the garden Richard planted, reading in the living room where we used to watch movies together. Lydia helped me update my trust documents, adding provisions that protect against any future attempts at manipulation. When I die, the house will be sold, and the proceeds donated to an elder advocacy organization that helps seniors fight financial exploitation. Daniel won't get a penny. Part of me feels guilty about that. Like I'm punishing him beyond what's fair, but a larger part knows it's the right choice. He proved he can't be trusted with assets, can't be trusted to put family before greed. Better the money should help people who need it than go to someone who already betrayed me once. Sometimes late at night I replay everything in my head, wondering if there were signs I missed, earlier warnings I ignored. The truth is there probably were. Chloe's gold digger tendencies, Daniel's increasing financial stress, the way they'd started talking about the house's value even before Richard died. I'd dismissed it all as normal family concerns, normal interest in estate planning. I'd been willfully blind because I didn't want to face the truth about what my son was becoming. That's another flaw of mine, that tendency toward denial, toward wanting to believe the best in people even when evidence suggests otherwise. It nearly cost me everything, but I learned from it. I learned that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones you need to watch most carefully. I learned that legal protections aren't paranoia, they're survival tools. And I learned that standing up for yourself, even when it means destroying relationships, is sometimes the only choice. People in the neighborhood have heard about the trial, about what happened. Some look at me with pity, others with respect. Mrs. Chen from next door brought over a casserole and told me I was brave for standing up to them, that too many elderly people just let family take advantage because they're afraid of being alone. Maybe she's right. Maybe there are hundreds of Alina Whitmores out there right now, signing papers they don't understand, transferring assets to children who see them as nothing more than a paycheck, ending up in facilities they never wanted to be in. Maybe by fighting back, by prosecuting Daniel and Chloe, I helped someone else too. Or maybe I'm just a bitter old woman who chose paperwork and pride over family reconciliation. Some days I can't tell which version is true. The funny thing about revenge, if you can call it that, is that it doesn't feel satisfying the way you think it will. I didn't feel triumphant watching Chloe get sentenced or hearing that Daniel's life fell apart. I just felt tired and sad and lonely. I'd won, I'd protected my home and my autonomy, but the cost was my relationship with my only child. Was it worth it? I still don't know. What I do know is this: I'm 72 years old and I'm still in my own home, making my own decisions, living my own life. Nobody gets to take that from me. Not my son, not his wife, not anyone. This house, this life, they're mine. I earned them through 40 years of work and 37 years of marriage and 3 years of widowhood. If that makes me selfish, so be it. Maybe selfishness is just self-preservation with better branding. As I write this, sitting at my dining room table where Daniel once tried to get me to sign my life away, I'm at peace with my choices. Not happy, but at peace. There's a difference. I did what I had to do to protect myself. I used every tool at my disposal, every piece of legal knowledge I'd accumulated, every recording and document and bit of evidence. I fought back against people who saw me as weak and incompetent and easy to manipulate, and I won. But victory is cold company on quiet evenings. The house feels bigger now, emptier, full of ghosts and memories and lost futures. I imagine sometimes what it would be like if things had gone differently, if Daniel had been stronger, if Chloe had been kinder, if Richard was still alive to mediate and protect. But that's not the reality I live in. Reality is this: I'm alone in my house, surrounded by legal documents that protect me from the son I raised, waiting to die so my assets can go to strangers who will use them better than family would have. It's not the ending I imagined when I was younger, when I dreamed about grandchildren visiting on holidays and family dinners filled with laughter. But it's the ending I chose by refusing to be a victim, by standing up for myself even when it cost me everything else. And that has to be enough, that has to be worth something. I walk through my house now and see not just memories but battlegrounds, places where I fought for my independence and won, the dining room where I refused to sign, the study where I caught Chloe going through my files, the kitchen where I called the investigators. Every room is a victory, small and hollow as those victories might feel. This is my home, my sanctuary, my hill to die on, literally. And nobody, not even my own son, gets to take it from me. That's not revenge, exactly. It's just survival. But when you're 72 and alone and your family has tried to institutionalize you for your assets, survival feels like victory enough.